Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of You're Not Ready for This podcast. This week we're going to be talking a little bit about virtual reality and augmented reality. Just kind of, we're going to try to touch on different aspects of it from a gaming perspective and practical use perspective. Alan's going to bring some stuff to the table as far as some history, some backstory and whatnot. I'll see what I can bring to the table as far as some of the experiences I've had with them. So, Alan, VR, what are your thoughts on it?
I have absolutely no real experience with it that I may remember. Well, maybe if you want to talk about rides in Universal, would you count those as VR? For example, the Spider-Man ride that you get in a cart and they're like moving you around and you got the glasses and they're spraying like water on yourself, but like kind of like stimulating all your senses, but you're also seeing like a three-dimensional happenings of Spider-Man hanging you around and fighting like the other villains. I mean, if that counts as VR, then yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's in the same, kind of a thought process that we were going into the conversation with, but I think it's probably definitely a form of virtual reality. I mean, you could probably even say from my aspect, one of the very first times that I encountered anything of that nature was a 360-degree movie that was actually at Disney. It was at Disney World. I don't know how old I was, probably in my early teens, somewhere in that range. We were, family vacation at Disney World and whatnot. They had this 360-degree movie, and they walk you in, and you stood. There was no seats, but there was railings there, and I'm like, what are the railings for? It's for you to hold on to. And I'm like, hold on to what? We're watching a movie, right? So, but the movie was full on 360 degrees all around you, and it was on huge, screen, and the movie it was like from a first-person perspective of like skiing or maybe hang gliding and an airplane. And there was times when you're watching this that you felt you had to hold on because you felt like you were, legitimately either going to go down the hill or moving to the left and to the right. And there was no motion. It was just, movie. So the platform was still, there was no moving. And, I always thought that was like the coolest thing in the world. I was like, this is really, really neat because it's tricking your brain into thinking that you're actually moving. And that's kind of what, a lot of aspects of from a, VR perspective, are.
Interesting. I mean, I really find that it's not only super innovative, but so stimulating just because of that, because otherwise you're experiencing things that maybe you have, say a disability or a condition that you might not be able to experience something, but through virtual reality, you might get to experience something akin to that. And that's what these technologies kind of bringing to the table, that the inclusivity of experiencing learning and a whole other topics that we might cover during the podcast, that I think really make this the future. And I can see why so many companies are so vested into investing resources on improving and making the technology more affordable, because definitely the point of entry for some people might not be feasible at the time of being. Sure. Though you might make the argument that a cell phone can be rather expensive, obviously depending if you're going like top of the line like iPhone or other devices. But it has become an essential part of your day to day. I think the thing that these companies need to find is how they make so that these technologies are made essential not only for the private sector but for the public commercial, right. Not only commercial use. But during the research that I was doing, I thought that this is something that when you saw in movies or a lot of the media that we consume, and namely, I guess the most popular pop culture references like The Matrix. Everyone knows about getting jacked up into the Matrix and experiencing and feeling and doing all this fantastical stuff through a virtual space that was simulated. And that's like the point of reference for a lot of people. Maybe for others, it's anime series like Sword Art Online that people put on the helmet, they're sleeping as well, and they're playing like an MMORPG and all the other implications. The people that have seen like Cyberpunk, both the game and the series, know have seen that as well. And a bit of I guess, a confession. I was recently during a streak that I was watching like K dramas, like Korean dramas.
Okay.
And there I saw one that just so happens, it didn't cross my mind at that point when if it was that was gonna be a topic of conversation for a cast, but there was a series called Hollow Love, and it's this gal that has a pair of glasses that through augmented reality is able to interact with a virtual copy of the guy that actually made the device.
Okay.
And well, obviously it's a drama, so you can imagine it has all these up and downs and silly situations, but the concept still through augmented reality of how through the lenses she was able to interact with her surroundings with additional information, and we're not that far from that.
Right.
When I mentioned that this is not as innovative as I thought that it was, is because since the 1950s, there was something that has been to some shade of manner been studied and even been developed. The guy that started with all this development was Morton Heilig, and it was through something called the Sensorama. And it was basically like a machine that was able to stimulate the senses through stereo sound, like a sort of 3D display. It had even like a vibrating chair for stimuli. It had fans. Sure. It got like smell generators. So
sure.
It's always been on the minds of people, like, how do we make a concept an abstract, and how do we recreate it? Like, how do we simulate it, even if we're not there? So, quote unquote, this is not something new.
No.
But in the recent years, there have been significant advances on this technology, and I really found it fascinating, and that's what I kind of brought it to the table. Hey, Kevin, maybe we want to touch upon it and see what our experiences with that.
Well, most definitely, and my experiences with it primarily are from a gaming standpoint, from a PlayStation VR standpoint specifically. But you bring up a really good point as far as some of the stuff that might not be virtual reality when you're thinking about how it is today, but it's been around for such a long time. Especially when you take a look and me being able to work for an airlines at one point in my career, had the opportunity to actually fly in an actual flight simulator. It was in a legitimate. It was in a flight simulator that the pilots do their training and their recurring qualifications on. So it, and I mean, for all intents and purposes, that is another form of virtual reality, as you said. Yes, they're in a compartment that does move and whatnot, but the screens, and here's what's interesting. So when I was in there, we're talking about probably it was after probably early 2000s, that time frame, right? And they had some older simulators and they had some newer simulators, and the older simulators obviously were still very good, but the main difference was really the graphical quality on the display screens. You could tell this is not a real world. And then the newer one, the graphics were obviously much better. I can't imagine how they are today, where they might even have the opportunity to really, you take something like Microsoft Flight Simulator and you look at the graphics in that game and you put that into a flight simulator, and you'd be damn sure, you'd be you wouldn't know if you were in a real legitimate airplane or not, right? Especially because the cockpit is actually a real cockpit from the airplane. It's just really it's the monitors that are the big difference. And obviously the compartment that you're in is on hydraulics and moves up and down, left and right. So it's quite amazing. And I when I was lucky enough to be able to sit in one and fly in one, and I say fly, not like we were really flying, right? But it's one of those things where I would tell people, afterwards I came out, I was shaking because the experience was so riveting, I guess. And I would tell people, if you could blindfold somebody and bring them in and then take the blindfold off, they wouldn't know that they were not on a real plane.
Yeah.
and it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. I mean, that's obviously something that's you can do some. You can screw up in that without having to worry about endangering people's lives.
Oh, and being rather costly,
so,
yeah, for human life, or for a plane. It's memory is one of those things that as you get older, it starts betraying you, because I said I had no experience, but I guess they will fall into the realm of the types of virtual reality. And I guess if people are tuning in, most likely they already know what virtual reality is, have at least a notion of what virtual reality is. And before we keep running, I guess with the ball, like basically it's the simulation of an experience or a different world. Like you being placed in a position that is not necessarily your surroundings. And
right.
I guess that can be divided in categories. Like you could have a non-immersive experience, and that is something that everyone is aware and interacting with it, I guess, for enjoyment in almost a daily basis, but wouldn't think out of the gate that it's a virtual experience. And I guess you could call video games a non-immersive example, maybe, of a virtual reality example, no?
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't know if I would necessarily classify it under the virtual reality, but a virtual experience, definitely.
Yeah, but then, because then if you want to get a bit technical, then you could start talking about semi-immersive, and then maybe you can talk about like the headsets or the haptics gloves or the treadmills and all the other devices. And when I kind of start thinking about it, I remember back in 2017. Yeah, it was at the start of 2017. I went to the National History Museum in New York, and I remember they had an exhibition called Dark Universe that Neil deGrasse Tyson was narrating about, like, our comprehension of the universe, what we know, what we don't know. And it was super accelerating, like you just said, with the experience with the piloting simulator. It was a dome on a theater where they were projecting the stars, and instead of you looking at a screen like in a theater that is at the end of the room, everyone was sitting in a round formation, and basically you were looking up at the exhibition, but it felt as if the stars were passing through you. For me, it was a rather mind-blowing experience, and like I said earlier, when your memory starts betraying you.
Sure. Well, I mean, and I don't want to go in too deep about it, because I think that it's kind of gone and come and gone. It's actually come and gone twice. Is 3D. You remember the old 3D movies where they had the red and the green glasses, and that was kind of a almost virtual reality-esque as far as it's trying to put you inside of that movie and have things pop out at you. And then they went through the whole process of doing the newer style 3D, where it has the polarized glasses, where it would, now the colors weren't all skewed, and then they had they were making a lot of 3D movies, and then they came out with TVs that did 3D, and that's kind of all mostly gone by the wayside now, because I don't think people really gravitated towards it too much. But I mean, you could say that that's a little bit of a similar kind of experience than like putting on a headset and diving into a virtual reality world. Not exact, obviously, but I mean, from even from just a technical standpoint during that time period, it was still pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's just the blurry picture that they showed, and the effect with the. I think it varied, because in some places it was green and red, and in some others I remember it was blue and red.
Blue and red was what I always remembered.
Yeah, that they gave you the glasses, and basically it was, but with a different color, it would kind of unite the image, but make it stand out. Now they gave you the glasses for the IMAX theaters and all the experience 3D that they do now. So I guess it's still something in theaters as far as a personal experience for people at home. I haven't heard, or at least I'm not privy to, well, when I say the common people, obviously I'm not saying people that have like their own personal theaters that might be experiencing that on a, I guess, common occurrence on their livelihood. But you mentioned the full immersive, like I guess the most famous case aside from the Matrix and is this Sword Art Online. I guess people that know about anime, it's basically a series that people put like a headgear and they're able to lie on bed and transport themselves to like a MMO experience, and they're playing and like being adventurers and leveling up and all that. And it was all fine and dandy until some catastrophe happens that basically they cannot leave the virtual reality and they're stuck on the virtual reality. And if they die on the virtual reality, they die on real life. The concept at the time for a lot of people was mind blowing. And I don't know whether from out of that or it was already a startup, a Kickstarter that happened a while ago, was a company called Half Dive. And they had a project called Diver X, and they wanted to achieve something, I guess, similar. At no point, this is me paraphrasing to make that clear, achieve something similar to a full dive experience, to you be laying on bed with a headgear and all that. At no point they're making reference to the series or the Matrix or nothing akin. But basically that's what they wanted to achieve. So your mind was able to be transported to a particular place and live a particular life or something on the kind. But apparently the Kickstarter was, they had to back out of the Kickstarter in January of last year, 2022. Apparently they have a lot of problems among those, like cash flow, organizational, like structure problems regarding like financing and affordability, because all of this technology, to make it affordable, you cannot expect to make a device that costs like $1,500,000 and expect everyone to be able to buy it, or even a price that is modest for some of the other devices that we might cover down the line, that are even more expensive. But apparently they were not able to make that more affordable given the partner that they have for the distribution and being able to do the development to the quality that they wanted to. And I read about it and it sounded interesting, but it's like I can see why it might have been a problem, because not only you gotta take into consideration the text input and the motion controls to be able to select things on the screen, because for you, that's easy, but the technical aspect of it, all the development, the coding, the data processing, all of that is going to be taken into consideration. And that's an aspect, I guess, that us from the technical world, having that, hands-on experience can comprehend. Maybe you can speak a bit more from your experience with the PSVR that you mentioned. It's not the same you having the processing capacity on the device that you have on yourself, say, the pair of goggles with a big headset that is super heavy.
Sure.
I came to the Zoro demo class. Obviously, not to that extent. That was some of the first VR experience that they were like developing. It was like a huge headset that they had a tube going from the top of the head that clearly was like a heavy thing hanging over your head. That's why they call it a sword, because if that thing broke loose, well, you know what would happen. But getting a bit sidetracked on that, it's more so of how you gotta take consideration. Either you move the processing power to the cloud, or you have it on another device, say a computer, the PlayStation, or other hardware. And that's how I'm fascinated how the whole PSVR experience is, and maybe you can talk a bit more about it.
Yeah, I definitely can, because I've had quite a bit of experience with both the PSVR 1 and 2. Now, before I get into it, I do want to make sure that everybody does understand that when you were talking earlier about, the full dive experience versus a regular, VR experience, and that how that theoretically works is that the full dive is where your body is basically incapacitated, and where the virtual reality device is sending signals to your brain. Basically, the way I would try to think of it is you're in a literal dream state where you're actually moving and walking around just like you would in real life, as opposed to a normal virtual reality experience where you have a headset on and you're still controlling your body. You still know that your body you're still controlling a character in a game or in an environment, where you're still moving around your body, and it's not just. Yeah, I guess it's kind of difficult to explain. Hopefully, I did okay that people understand. Like more of a dream like scenario, or obviously like the Matrix, where they plug in and now you're quote unquote transported into a virtual device, a virtual world that it literally feels like you're in that world. I guess it's tough to explain.
Well, it's a simulated reality, quite literally.
Right, exactly. But so you can probably understand why this company is going to probably have some trouble. It's I don't know if we're quite there yet. And obviously you're also now introducing legitimate risks involved when you're trying to send false signals to your brain.
There's where it goes into the field, and maybe I don't want to divert too much into it. Maybe we can talk about it a bit more later, because I still want you to tell me about your experience of the PSVR. But there's the whole concept of like BCIs, or very computer interfaces. The ones that are invasive and the ones that are non-invasive, because they can, like an MRI, see the electromagnetic signals in your brain, and from that being able to record them and tie those, like if you were doing like a database of queries and keywords, like tying those to a particular stimuli or response.
Right.
Yeah, again, I can get a bit more on that later. Don't want to jump but through that, it's maybe when people can maybe associate the whole full dive experience, because by reading the signals of the brain, either invasively or non-invasively, through electrodes and electromagnetic signals, are able to get you to experience that, because it's not only you having the headset and seeing what is or hearing what they're trying to present to you, but they're taking the imagery and presenting it to your brain. Like it's like taking the concept of abstract learning, because it's a very particular field with the VR itself that has been developed. When you read a book, you're learning through 2D, basically, and even videos to some extent, though. That's why videos have become so popular, because obviously you got that quote-unquote three-dimensionality on the video when someone is explaining something. But learning through 3D, it allows you to be on a place or situation. It's like you were reading a book, but you're quite literally put there, and say that you're trying to learn how to change like something in the motor of a car, like you're dealing with the bushings or dealing with a distribution chain or something on the like. Maybe you don't have a car accessible for you to be able to practice or do all of that, but through virtual reality, you're put in a position that you can actually feel like you're there.
From a image standpoint, and from your brain standpoint, you can definitely feel like you're there. The actual feeling, though, is kind of where it gets a little bit more complicated, unless you're either going to be using some sort of controller, or even if they're able to read your hand movements and stuff like that, you're not going to be able to feel what the parts, from a car or something like that actually feel like. So that obviously,
and they're trying, because they got a few companies, one of them being the Hi-Fi VR glove, and some others that are cheaper, that try to recreate like the resistance when you're grabbing like a cube, a ball or something, and it transmits that sensation to the hand. It might take a few years, but they're still experimenting with that. They also got like vests that you put on yourself that simulate when, I guess, you get shot on a Call of Duty game or a shooting game. So
I'd be on the ground, man.
So they're definitely, there's a lot of things out there that I think that they're working on, but again, the affordability, obviously I haven't gotten the experience to try any of those, but you can talk at least from the standpoint of, for example, because you experienced both the PSVR and the PSVR 2.
Yeah, exactly. And the PSVR was my first foray into actual virtual reality gaming. I had no experience with it before. I was always kind of skeptical about it, and it was one of those things where, it's like, it seemed like it was pretty cool, but I don't know how much I'm really going to like this and whatnot. And, it was one of those things where I lucky enough to be able to, purchase things and try them out and whatnot. Like they decided to come out with this PlayStation VR. Wow, okay, this looks interesting. So I'm gonna go ahead and pre-order it because I want to check it out. It was like $400 or whatever it was. And, like okay, and then as the time moved a little bit closer, I started to get kind of like hem and haw, like you know what? Maybe I'm just gonna cancel it because I don't know. Is this thing gonna be really good? Is it not? And then I started looking at, people who had gotten their hands on it, and they were like, wow, this is really cool. It's like bringing me back to the first time I ever played video games. And a lot of these videos and the reviews and people that were writing about it kind of convinced me. So I was like, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and keep my order, and I'll go and pick it up. So I went and I picked it up. Now, I don't want to get too involved as far as like the specifications on the setup and all that other good stuff about the PlayStation VR because we're focusing on a lot of different aspects, so I don't want to.
Oh, geek out.
The setup was a pain in the ass. Okay, so what Sony ended up doing with the PlayStation VR it was obviously meant for the PlayStation 4, but when the PlayStation 4 was designed, they did not design it with a virtual reality headset in mind. So it was not really powerful enough to be able to handle the processing power that virtual reality garners. So what they ended up doing was they created a headset that was attached. Well, it was detachable, but it came with a breakout box. So the breakout box had another processor in it, and that did a lot of the processing power to take that stress off of the PlayStation 4, supplement the processing power that was needed for the headset. The downside of this obviously was the complications as far as hooking it up. The other downside was the original one. The original breakout box did not support HDR. So if your TV supported HDR and you had your PlayStation VR 1 hooked up all the time, it would basically cancel out your HDR. Reason being is you had to plug in the HDMI port from your PlayStation into the breakout box, and then the breakout box had the HDMI port that went to your TV. Okay? So the way I had to do it, of course, my TV had HDR, so I had to unplug it from the back and plug in the breakout box. That breakout box required the HDMI ports that went from your TV to the breakout box to the PlayStation. Then it required a USB port plug in to your PlayStation, and then you had your headset that had to plug in. So the wires were everywhere. It was kind of a nightmare. That being said, it was still a pretty cool experience, just because of what they were able to do. The other thing that they did, which was very interesting, I found it very interesting, was they kind of retrofitted the PlayStation Move controllers and the camera that utilized the Move controllers for the headset, and they actually had the controllers' ability to work with the PlayStation VR as well. And it was interesting because the Move controllers, I don't know if everybody remembers the Move controllers. They had the ball of light on the top, and it changed different color.
I think I remember. Yeah, if it looked like high tech maracas.
Correct. And the headset itself had lights on the front and the back and the sides. Okay, so the way that the original PlayStation VR did its tracking was it utilized the PlayStation camera, either the PlayStation 4 camera, and the camera would look and see the lights on the headset and the controllers, and that's how it would track where you were in the environment. When you're moving your head around, when you're moving your arm and stuff around, that's how it was doing the majority of its tracking. It did have an accelerometer in it as well, for the movement, but for the most part, it's using the LED lights. It sounds cool. The downside was it's not very accurate. So, if you're not in the right line of sight from the camera, it's going to lose focus on the light. It might drop off, or you might think your hand is here, but on the screen it's like maybe a little bit over here. It was a little bit tricky, but you got to give them a lot of credit because the Move controllers were PS3 technology. So instead of them developing a whole new way to do the VR at a way that they could cut costs and keep things cheaper, and still was still extremely expensive, but they had the ability to now utilize some of their older tech and bring virtual reality to PlayStation. The other downside was the resolution was not very high. It was a 1920 by 1080, so it was just a HD resolution. So it wasn't the most crystal clear of all headsets. They have to now. The thing with the virtual reality is they have to keep the refresh rate high though. So that was still high. It has to be between 90 and I think 120 hertz. Otherwise, and some people still experience the motion sickness. But if the refresh rate isn't high and the frame rate is bad, it's not a good
experience.
It's virtual reality, right? It's not supposed to feel like if I look to the right, look to the left, it has to feel like I'm looking to the right, to the left in real life, right? So, all that being said, the very first time I fired up the PlayStation VR was the first time that it actually clicked because I didn't really understand what I was getting myself into. I didn't understand it until I fired up my first game, which I think was Battlezone. It was on the demo disc. It came with a demo disc with a bunch of games, and it was Battlezone. It fired up. My jaw hit the floor when it did, because all of a sudden I'm like, holy shit, I am inside of this tank, and I'm looking down. I'm looking to the right. I'm looking to the left. I look behind me. I'm in a tank. Whoa, this is cool. And then you start moving around and it's like, whoa, what the heck is going on? It really does a fantastic job of literally tricking your brain into thinking that you are there. It's amazing. And it's definitely one of those things I can't express enough to people who are skeptical, maybe people who don't think that it's cool or it doesn't have a place in gaming. Try it. You have to try it. If you can get over to a friend's house, to Best Buy that might have one or something of that nature. Probably not doing it so much now with the pandemic anymore, but sharing headsets at a store. But that being said, if you can have an opportunity to give it a shot, do it, because it might not change your mind as far as saying, hey, okay, well, virtual reality still might not have a place, and that's fine. But I think it might click a little bit more for somebody when they actually get a chance to actually try it. It is wild. It's really, really cool. I know that the PlayStation VR was not the best headset out there from a technical standpoint, but it still did an exceptional job of getting somebody into an entry level virtual reality experience. Now, the headset itself was awesome. It was nice and lightweight. It was comfortable. Had a lot of different customizations as far as the ergonometry on the headset, so you can make it very comfortable to fit on your head. The downside was the ventilation wasn't great, so it got a little warm. Sometimes the lenses would get fogged up, so that was some of the negatives. But overall, the overall experience was awesome.
Did you have trouble with your surroundings, or did you make sure that there was nothing like right in your immediate vicinity while you were interacting on the VR headset?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's a great question because, especially with the PSVR, the original one, it was a little bit difficult. So with that one, you were restricted in your environment because you had to be in sight of the camera, and the camera had its own field of view. Right? So you couldn't get outside of that field of view. So your space that you were sitting in or standing in was pretty restricted on the PlayStation VR. So if you had set aside like a space that you were going to stand in or sit in and play, then you're not really going to move much out of that space. You could maybe move a little bit to the right or to the left, but not a whole lot. And it will tell you when you're outside of that space. It'll come up and say, "Hey, sorry, you're outside of line of sight." Blah blah blah.
You're out of bounds.
You're out of bounds, basically. Exactly. So, but it didn't do any kind of tracking of your environment or allowing the headset to know your environment. It was pretty rudimentary. It was basically just the camera and the headset. And if the camera couldn't see the headset or the lights on the headset, you're out of bounds. Does that mean you were out of bounds or the light it couldn't see the light? Could be either one. So I felt a little uncomfortable at first from an aspect of I didn't know what was going on outside of my, world, outside of my headset. Keep in mind you're also wearing headphones.
So you were isolating yourself quite literally in your household, and you didn't have a way to see to the outside unless obviously you remove the gear.
That's correct. And so that kind of leads that's a pretty decent segue into what a lot of the changes that they made for the PSVR 2, which is only for PlayStation 5. One of the best things that they did with that one. Now this one works differently in the aspect of it doesn't require a camera. It has cameras built into the headset.
Yeah. Okay.
Basically they're probably just like little cell phone headset or cell phone cameras all inside the headset. Those are the things that are doing the tracking. So their tracking is much, much more accurate. The other great thing that they did was there's a button on it that you can hit, and it will switch the cameras to pass through. And now I can see my house, my environment, without having to.
So in a way, it's mixing AR to some extent because it's taking a look at your surroundings and allowing you to not only interact with your virtual reality, but if you need to, you can see your surroundings.
Very much so. In fact, one of the setup processes is it flips to that view, and it has a augmented reality, basically cage, for lack of a better word, that you basically look around and scan your environment, and then it says, okay, here's your play area, and you can now customize that play area with the controller and say, I want to move the play area over here. I want to watch out for this table over here. Let's eliminate that from the play area. Let's go ahead and make this a little bit smaller. And then you can basically customize it using the augmented reality visual that it brings up and customize the play area to your surrounding. So it's pretty awesome from that aspect. And another thing that I really liked that they did was they added, and actually I don't think this is PSVR 2 specific. I'm pretty sure the PlayStation 5 does this on its own. There's a setting in there, and I for the life of me I can't remember the name of it, but it allows certain. You can set the sensitivity level of allowing sounds from outside your outside environment into the microphone and passing it through to your headset. So basically, and you can make it like, really strong, or you can bring it down. So basically, I can still hear my cell phone if it goes off, even though I have my noise canceling headsets on. Because it's going to pass. And now I can make it stronger. I can make it weaker. I can make it turn it off so I can't hear crap other than my headphones. I can make it so that I kind of turned it on. I put it like a little bit in the middle there. So if I can hear a text message come through. Oh, okay, cool. I know. So I don't feel like I'm totally alienated, from
your surroundings.
From my surroundings. I had one of my buddies come over. He was going to come over and check it out, and he ended up. This was on the PlayStation VR 1. He ended up sitting outside my house for like 20 minutes, thinking that I wasn't home or something like that. I was checking. I had the VR headset on. I had no idea he was there.
Kevin died.
So, Kevin, I might have died. Oh, I'm sure I died in the game multiple times. But no, exactly. And I was expecting him, and I was like, oh, I still want to check this out real quick because I was setting it up for when he was going to come over so he could check it out. So of course, then my dumbass puts it on. I'm like, oh, look at this.
Yeah, but you wouldn't know otherwise. And so, but at the end, you were able to listen to your body and get him in, and I guess show him that you were on the VR headset and all.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty cool because then obviously he got a chance to go ahead and check it out for himself because he had not messed with it before, so he was pretty interested in it. Now going back to some of the different original PlayStation VR and the PSVR 2, the other nice part is because the PlayStation 5 is so powerful, it doesn't have a breakout box, so it's basically one cable that plugs into your PS5. It's just a single USB cable, plug it in, and you're off and ready to go. The other great part is the controllers that it comes with. The controllers that it came with are designed specifically for virtual reality. They're able to track, your hand moving, up and down, right, left, obviously, but, rotation, it has sensors so it knows that if you're gripping the controller or you're not gripping the controller. So, like in certain games, if you remove your hand from the controller, the character removes it opens his hand as well. So it can do some of that kind of aspect. Obviously, nowhere near as detailed as it would be needed for something, in more of a practical manner. But they did a really, really good job of from the controllers and the headset. They did a better job on the ventilation system. It got more airflow, so you don't get as warm. I don't get the lenses fogging up and whatnot. So, they're both really good headsets. And again, that's really my experience when it comes down to gaming on a virtual reality headset. Now, I did want to ask you from a gaming perspective, where do you think, or how do you feel about virtual reality as far as like a gaming platform, or where do you think it fits?
Personally, because I haven't had a hands-on experience in the gaming realm for virtual reality, funny enough, I had with augmented reality that we casually mentioned it, but I guess for those that might be tuning in and are not aware or have a vague notion of it and what's the difference between VR and AR, it kind of sounds the same. Augmented reality clearly is taking like your surroundings and showing them to you through the optics, but it's including like additional aids, both either through sound or visual aids, and through that you get a enhanced experience of reality. That's why they call it augmented reality. And the experience that I have, funny enough, is with Pokemon Go.
Sure.
When it was all the craze back in 2016, I had two phones because the application would consume the battery so fast that if I want to keep playing, I had to switch phones to be able to have enough charge.
You went in hard on this.
Oh yeah, dude, that was it was a couple of months. My friends and I, back in Puerto Rico, we will go to San Juan and we will go and catch Pokemons, and you will hear everyone like forming like crowds. Dude, it was crazy. Like people in mass, like moving. Like it was like usually we have like La Calle de San Sebastián. It's a festivity that we have, and there's a large crowd of people moving through the capital on the streets. Mm. It was almost akin to that, but people were just playing Pokemon in real life.
That's crazy. Yeah, I remember it being real big. I never did get into it.
How from my experience on that, I can say that it's highly addicting, I guess any other, game. And the fact that you're stimulating your senses to another level, I guess these were some of the complications on fear on this technology might arise of people not able to make that distinction or control their urges, I guess, as far as the stimuli that some of this technology might cause, especially if they're enhancing the experience or creating a different experience that you haven't had before. So I myself, I would like to try something like a headset or something like for example, the HoloLens from Microsoft, or
Right.
whenever Apple releases the Reality Pro. I guess I'm not sure if that's the official name for the device that Apple is working on. They're taking their time. They've been working for this for, I guess, more than 7 years or so.
Yeah.
But it's not gonna be something cheap, especially being Apple, and
Apple.
having the Pro at the end. Most likely, it's gonna be rather expensive.
Yeah.
But from the gaming standpoint, yeah, I would like to try it, but I would have my reservations as far as like diving right in and being like the whole experience, because it can be very easy to get yourself lost. And I guess if you don't have the self restraint or the force of will, it can lead to, I guess, like everything, addiction.
It can.
But man, again, because I haven't had the experience that you had, and that's why I wanted to hear your account on it. It really sounds like it's an astonishing experience, especially with games that we interact in a almost weekly or daily basis, depending on your exposure to it. And I really got fascinated with the whole concept, just from the standpoint of how it can be used on other fields aside from gaming. Like, there's a lot of fields of interest. Like in aerospace, you mentioned, for example, the experience you had with the flight simulator. But that can also go into education, fashion, marketing, in museum exhibits, like the one that I mentioned with the Dark Universe, especially social media. And I guess that's where you got all the MetaQuest Pro and Facebook diving in. And have you seen anything related to the MetaQuest Pro?
The MetaQuest Pro, not specifically. You're talking about the actual headset itself, right?
The headset, and obviously what they shown as far as the experience, at least from video and conferences.
Yeah, no, I haven't really looked too much into it. I mean, I know of like the whole metaverse thing, that kind of stuff that I know that Facebook has been working on that, or Meta, I guess I should say, been working on that for quite a while, and I guess that partners up with the headset experience, but I haven't really looked specifically at, say, specifications or what the experience is for that particular headset now.
I gotta say, from looking at it, like, superficially, again, I haven't had one, unfortunately, one in my hands, but it looks rather decent. And from the reviews that I've seen in general, it looks like a solid device.
Sure.
My only pet peeve, I guess, is the whole meta side of it, like the metaverse, because the avatars they've been trying to recreate, that, again, if they're using the technology that they're using the cameras to scan you and recreate a copy of yourself from the virtual world, but it looks a bit cartoonish, and that out of itself can be a bit off-putting, especially if they're presenting this as a technology that they want to use for conference meetings, from the business standpoint. It's cool because it can use the cameras to track your facial movements. Like, if you're smiling, the avatar will smile. If you blink, it's gonna blink. So it got a lot of sensors and technology going through it that I do find that fascinating. It's just that how much are you gonna get out of your investment aside from going to the metaverse? I guess if the metaverse part of it that hasn't mature enough, or at least it's not in the purview of a lot of people to dive into it and say, well, what do I do aside from, I guess, hanging out with my friends in the virtual world? I guess you could say that a lot of people do that already through video gaming or Discord or other interfaces. Things like, for example, VR Chat already were doing this a long time ago. Maybe it doesn't have all the features and the backing from a multi-million-dollar company, but they've been doing this for a while already.
Well, you remember PlayStation Home?
I heard of it. Yeah.
That was a PlayStation 3, and that was kind of that was the whole thing where that was the metaverse before the metaverse, where they utilized PlayStation Network to, you could create your character and you could purchase your home, and They had, stores, and you can go and meet people at the arcade and play games and stuff like that. It was kind of the whole thought process with that, and it didn't last very long.
But they tried, and I guess either we're close to the edge of jumping the fence, and we're here in the new age, and this is gonna become the custom. But definitely the pricing and the offering are things that are, I guess, from the company and business standpoint. Obviously, they want to gamify the experience, and from that, you're gonna be sure that they're gonna look for a way, especially Facebook, Google, all these companies, that they leave out of running ads. You're gonna see pop-ups left and right when you have a headset, like, hey, buy this or buy the other, or microtransactions. And obviously this is all theory crafting, but you can be sure that that's in their purview some way or another.
Oh, most definitely.
And from most than gaming, yeah, I find that interesting. I find it more interesting from the other fields of interest, especially from when I mentioned earlier about the brain-computer interfaces, because I really got caught up on that, because you being able to be able to interact with something without the need of using a controller, you have like your hands free. I mean, who doesn't want to move stuff with your mind? Insert Forspoken reference here, I guess, for those that know. If you know, you know. It's a video game that was released recently, and the main character had a quote that was like, I can move shit with my mind, end quote. But aside from that, if the advancements that they've done, they might be under infancy in some aspect, but the applications in the medical, military, sports, I find that are very fascinating. Especially, I guess I do not claim to know anything about psychology or neurology or neuroplasticity or any of the such, but the concept of how malleable our brains are and how you can rewrite the neural pathways through exposure, either through learning, like, when you try to practice a skill, you want to be the very best at batting or catching the ball or fielding or whatever. That's something that you're investing time to learn, and eventually physically you learn it, but obviously your brain learns it to the point that, like you said in a previous podcast or two ago, that you don't want to think on baseball. You don't want to think on it, but it's because you're already practiced enough that your body already created those patterns to be able, when something happens, your body moves accordingly to it. So imagine if that can be done without the part of actually investing the time. And that sounds scary, sounds very on the what if part of it, but just think about it. And not only that, the application, for example, treating conditions that might be obviously neurological or diseases. I believe it was a university in Chicago. They had a study of Parkinson's disease treatment through VR, incorporating treadmills, so people were able to interact like in a shopping environment, and they were able to move around and be able to control themselves. That's the part that I really feel like, man, we're doing something valuable with this that is not tied directly to a company, like a brand that they want to sell for commercial use. That is something that can be applied for the betterment of those that actually need it. Obviously, it had its setbacks because of, like you mentioned earlier, when some people, when they're using the VR headsets, they get the whole, like, motion signal, they call it. It's like the inconsistency between the visual and the locomotion stimuli, because it's very different. Like, you're seeing something, but it's like, best I can describe it, when you wake up in the middle of the night, you don't want to turn on the light, but you already got like a mapping of your house when it's dark.
Right, yeah.
like if you were a bat and you're using echolocation to find yourself around your house.
yeah, and I'll still stub my toe.
Yeah, especially the toe. But imagine that you have the headset and you're trying to interact with where you're seeing, but you still, to a certain extent, aware of your surroundings, but your surroundings doesn't match up with what you're seeing. And that's the best way that I can, I guess, comprehend why some people get the whole motion sickness. And
it's motion sickness, yeah.
And
I consider myself lucky because I have not encountered any motion sickness when playing VR. And they do have a lot of different settings where you can make things either not smooth or where, for example, from first person view, I like to play it on full motion where it's basically just like you're playing a normal first person experience. But some people that makes them very sick, so they have different options that you can set so that when you move the controller like to the right, it doesn't move smooth. It moves the character in like a angle, or a set. It skips, frames. Like boom, it kind of clicks. One boom, boom, boom instead of smooth to help with that. And then some of the other aspects they have where I like to have it as full screen. Sometimes they'll have it where there's like a border around it and it kind of like push, basically kind of throws, it kind of limits your peripheral a bit, and that kind of helps a little bit sometimes. I'm lucky from my standpoint, I'm able to turn a lot of that stuff off and I can play without having any uneasiness, but it's definitely a real thing for some people and they're not able to enjoy it.
I guess it would be a challenge, but as we keep, I guess, vesting time and resources, most likely we'll get to the point that we might be able to treat people through the technology, and sure. I guess we look for a way around the whole motion sickness and the uneasiness that some people feel when they're using the VR headset. Because, again, if there have been done studies about how meditation can be tied to controlling, say, chronic pain or depression or conditions, I'm pretty sure that you can use the technology as well to a similar manner to extend or better the livelihood of some people. And that for me is the field that I feel more tied to it, though I know that the entertainment and I guess when you say entertainment, you're including gaming, but also like movies and presentations or simulations, obviously go into the same category. But I guess I'll use it as a all-encompassing term, like entertainment is what taking the most attention from shareholders and investors. Have you heard of Neuralink?
Yes, I have. I'm not super familiar with it, but I have heard of it, yes.
So in 2021, they implanted physical electrodes or implants in the brain of a monkey, and the monkey was playing Pong without having to use a controller. And that out of itself has a lot of connotations, because of the things that we know. Obviously, the things that we don't know. But
so you tell me that now the monkey can beat my ass in a video game?
Most likely.
Yes, fair.
But it's the applications, because, like I mentioned earlier, you can either use sensors to catch the electromagnetic waves in the brain and be able to map those to inputs in a video game. I think I showed you a few months ago of a player that was mapping her brain to play Elden Ring. So if, for example, they wanted to attack, they would think of attacking, they would capture how her brain would look and map that to the button, and the character would do that in the game. So that technology technically exists already. Obviously, it's not as reliable as quite literally having the implants directly on your brain, but there so goes the consequence, and I guess the risk of scarring, bleeding. Obviously, the implants are going to wear and tear, so obviously it's a place of the body that you maybe don't want to mess a lot with, too frequently. I mean, it's your brain. And looking through that, I found a case of someone that had ALS, like a neuron disease that was affecting his movement capabilities. His name was Peter Scott Morgan, and he was very invested. He was very invested in the technology aspect of all these technologies. unfortunately, he suffered the disease, but he offered himself to be the first human cyborg, quite literally. So he was able to move a mechanical arm, stand up in his wheelchair, all through all this improvement. He had like surgery on his eyes, so he was able to see better.
Right.
Unfortunately, he passed away a few years later in 2022. But there, he was able to extend his life to some degree, thanks to the technology. So there's those implications as well, but also
Definitely.
I guess, but obviously the moral and ethical implications, because all this experimentation, aside from that case that I found from Peter Scott Morgan, I haven't like found a whole lot. I guess I didn't maybe do that deep of a dive, or maybe I had to go to other sources to find those. But we're obviously experimenting in animals, and there you go. It's always a touchy field as far as some people is concerned. Like, we might be able to improve this technology, but through what means? So it's like, does the end justify the means? And we got into all that conversation. And I guess you could say that the technology out of itself has a lot of security concerns. And we that work in technology, we all know how a simple flip of a switch or leak of data can be so detrimental, and especially all of these headsets and hand controls and everything is recording and gathering a lot of biometrical data about you, because it not only knows your location, it knows what you're thinking, your preferences, everything that is around you. You can say that it's gathering all that data, and how that data can be used against you, or they can go ahead and sell your data. You know, it can be pretty easy. And my concern from the standpoint of, for example, the invasive brain-computer interfaces, I mean, it's a computer, and I might not be as familiar to what the implants that they have been using for the cases that have been made public so far, but you know what a bit flip is, no?
Bit flip.
Yeah, so it's funny because I was talking to a friend of mine, giving a shout out to a friend of mine. If you know who you are, you know. We're talking casually about it because there's an event that I studied in science about cosmic rays that come to Earth and obviously have effects on technology and devices and electronics. And there's a particular case about Super Mario 64 of a guy that was doing a speed run in 2013. And he was attempting a jump that is impossible in the way that he did it, because right at that moment, there was a cosmic ray that passed through his console, flipped a switch, it did a bit flip. So basically, for people that don't know, obviously, shapes.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, he got like the whole zeros and ones. So obviously, an excited state or a resting state. So the excited state would be a quote unquote a 1, or an activated state, or an absent of it would be a 0. So there's nothing.
Sure.
So all that you're seeing in your monitor and your consoles, obviously that's all represented through all the circuitry on the console that you're using, or the interface.
Mm-hmm.
So when the cosmic ray passed through it irradiated enough electrons through the chip to flip the bit quite literally. So it went from a 1 to a 0, and you changing that in a hexadecimal position, obviously it can be very impactful, from going from a 11101 to a 111000001.
Yeah,
and that represents something very different. So so when he was making the jump, that happened, and he jumped to a position that his scatter was not supposed to reach. And that's not only the only instance of it. It has been seen in election machines, for example. I believe it was Romania. I don't have the case on the top of my head exactly, but it was a dignitary that had a lot of, like, 4,000 more votes than what was projected for the person to accrue. And they make a recounting of the votes, and it so happens that she had exactly 4,096 votes less. And if
Interesting.
you know about computers, you know what that number represents.
Yeah, that's wild.
So it's very specific because obviously you got all the increments of, of bytes and kilobytes and megabytes and all that. And so a bit flip happening while you have a thing implanted in your brain is something that I wouldn't want to happen. And I guess I don't want to implant like fear on it, but it's a concern of something that it might be on the lower extent of less than 1%, but it's still a chance of it happening.
Sure.
And something that is so invasive in your brain, I wouldn't have to deal with that.
Yeah, I mean the implications are crazy when you start thinking of the negative aspects that could potentially happen in a situation like that. Yeah, it's wild. I wonder if there's any protection they could put in place for that kind of stuff.
Some kind of insulation or something. I bet.
Yeah, exactly.
I bet that should be under consideration. If it wasn't, oops.
Right.
But again, I find all of the whole concept of it very fascinating. I would definitely want to see where it goes in the future, especially nowadays with all the conversation of AI going on. When both fields reach a peak, it might be scary or might be very beneficial. Who knows?
Yeah, no, I agree. And speaking from a gaming aspect, which is where my experience quote unquote comes from a virtual reality standpoint, I think it's definitely awesome. It's fun. It's not to the point where where it's going to replace traditional gaming. I don't know if it ever will. I think it might get close when it becomes to the point where it's almost like literally picking up a pair of glasses, putting them on, and boom, now you're ready to go. Because even I know that you had mentioned earlier, as far as like getting addicted and long play sessions from especially from my standpoint, anyways. I find it difficult to play for long periods of time, only because even though the headset is light and comfortable, it still, after a period of time, starts to get uncomfortable. So I don't really particularly care for playing for long play sessions with it. So if it's like a pair of sunglasses where you pick them up and put it on and no wires, and you're in that virtual reality world, yeah, now it could get a little bit scary, right? Because the ease of access, the ease of comfort is going to be there. So that's probably where it's going to need to go in order for it to become more mainstream. And then obviously, like you said earlier, when it comes down to cost, it needs to be reasonable.
The miniaturization of the technology and making that affordable, that's where we'll see how it goes. Obviously, there's a whole conversation, but I guess in a way it's implied of you might have some benefits because you were, for example, to do virtual meetings. You wouldn't have to have people flying across the country just to have a meeting, because you will, I guess, simulate being on a conference room with other people. And I guess that's something that a lot of people like out of having conference in person and not through Slack, Teams, Zoom, all the virtual meeting spaces. Non-virtual meeting spaces, I meant to say.
Right. And I get it and I don't get it at the same time when it comes down to something like that. I mean, your video conferencing, especially when it comes down to like Teams and Zoom, WebEx, and all the popular ones, they have all different kinds of settings for video, and you can have a whiteboard where you can write stuff on and everybody sees it, very similar to the way it is an actual conference room. So I don't know. From my standpoint, I don't really see a virtual conference room being that much more beneficial, but I know there are people that do like that environment.
That like that.
Might feel more comfortable. Yeah. In that environment, they feel like it might be more, hands on versus hands off, or there's a word I'm drawing a blank on, but not impersonal, basically, so yeah, I get it and I don't get it at the same time.
It's one of those things. People.
But I'm an IT guy. I don't like talking to people, right?
I guess a lot of us kind of a deal. Well, hey, we're here recording a podcast.
That's true. That's true.
I find there's a lot of potentiality to this. My only concern is the corporate aspect of it, being completely transparent of it. They're definitely gonna get their hands on it. And hey, I get it. They want to get return on their investment. It's a company. It's a business. But we're seeing, but we've seen not only in gaming, we've seen it in a multitude of other aspects of our daily life. How that can get into the point of companies trying to maximize profits and gamifying an experience to the point that it's toxic. I guess if you want specifics, games that do a lot of microtransactions or quote unquote free, but got a lot of things that you gotta buy to be able to progress. Like for example, mobile gaming that has a reputation out of itself. So it's gonna fall into that realm very quick if we don't keep an eye of it, or at least have the proper people on it. That's why, in a way, I'm fearful that something like Meta, Facebook becomes like the thing. Not that Apple is gonna be any better or Sony as it is, but who knows? Maybe someone comes among the line and actually makes an example of it. How to do it maybe ethically and not that predatory.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, and I mean that you could say that for pretty much any technology that's out there, and especially the hot one these days with artificial intelligence, right? So, I guess that's just the nature of things, and you have to hope that you end up with more benefits than negatives with this kind of stuff. That in the long run, that it does end up being more beneficial to people than it is detrimental to people. I don't know if you can really prevent.
No, it's not preventable.
You know what I mean?
I'm all that I'm granting here is wishful thinking, to be quite honest. Because I know it's not the reality. Get it?
It's the virtual reality.
I'm gonna be here at night, people.
All right. Where do we get tickets?
No, but in all reality, I guess it would be my final concern from the things that I read, and I guess I quote unquote put together myself, and I guess this is speculation. I have no hard evidence on it, so all this is speculation on my part. And again, this is also a conversation that I had with the same friend that we were talking about the Nintendo 64 bit flip. It's the sort of thing that, imagine you, like I mentioned earlier, you having all of this stimulation through the virtual space or the augmented reality or mixed reality that we haven't gone into that, or the extended reality. But to summarize, it's sort of a mixture of all the others to varying degrees. Imagine a company like Facebook, Apple, that is able to control the things that are promoted to you, that you're conditioned to like or dislike, and going through what I mentioned earlier about neuroplasticity, not only from the concept of learning skills or being exposed to a particular type of psychological stress. If you were able to mold the minds of people, super removed, super far-fetched. I know it sounds like a conspiracy theory, and I guess it is. But it's not that far from what we already experience having our mobile devices on ourselves.
Right.
Like my friend was mentioning, that I had my reservation with the virtual reality stuff, but he also said, "Hey man, can you be a whole month without your phone? You're already accustomed. If you don't have a phone, you need to go and buy one the next day or now, because you need to be connected some way or another, and you're already conditioned to having it with you, and the device out of itself is gathering data from you, even if you don't know about it." And I guess you can go into all the Snowden papers that were released about the data collection that the government does and all that. So I guess there's some degree of evidence of it out there. So I guess it's in the speculation realm of things, but that's my fear as far as one company having like all the market share of it. So this is where I believe the competition is important, and having a diversity of different people doing the same thing instead of just one being the predominant one.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree. It is somewhat scary to think about. And back on the actual virtual reality aspect of it, what if it gets to the point where, and I think you kind of were leading this way, and I'm not sure exactly, but my mind was going like to the point of how do you, if it's at the point where, do you know if you're actually
in a simulation,
in simulation or not, right?
you got there. I mean, the Matrix is something that has been a point of contest and debate for a lot of years. Hey, people still say, "How do you know that you're in a simulation now?" And all the tests that people do, yeah. And if oh no, they're presenting the technology now to make it so like they didn't have it before.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know, for those that have played Cyberpunk or have seen Edge Runners, that you know of a dystopian picture that is presented in that world, and obviously it's a representation from a fictional work from the author, but it's still something that is feasible. People were hooked up to a lens, and they had like a device on their pelvic area that was providing them, I guess, sexual gratification.
Oh.
And if it gets to that point, you can be sure that people are going to get hooked up on that. If that's not really a thing. Again, I didn't delve too much in it, but I saw the series and I imagine what might be possible, and especially if those companies start investing in that. I mean, it's a reality. People know that sex sells, so sure. that is something as well.
Always has, and I mean, it's that's something that people can get addicted to stuff like that very easily. This is much as anything else, but it's that's a whole different topic, I think.
It falls into the virtual reality, augmented reality, and all the others far as the applications, implications, and the potentiality of it. And I just wanted to cover some of the things that I was reading and
sure.
kind of say what was your experience, and hey, I might get into it in the future. Who knows? Right now, anyone can go to the Apple Store or the Play Store and download the IKEA mobile device, the app, I mean, and they can start changing furniture on their living room.
Yep, that's augmented reality right there.
That's augmented reality. The military is doing exercises of how can they apply stimuli to the soldiers to either get them through fear, pain, be able to get data real time of their surroundings. So again, the possibilities are endless. It's how much the technology and the advancements are keeping up with what we want to achieve. And the burnout.
I agree.
And the burnout.
I agree.
There's a lot of people that have investing a lot of time, resources on these technologies, and resources that are not going to come back. But I guess I'm talking specifically here of Meta, that they invested billions, if I'm not mistaken, of dollars in this technology, and apparently the market share of the company have gone down significantly. Whether that's something out of the result of how they tackle the technology and how they wanted to implement it and develop it, or they didn't foresee that maybe the market was too young to be able to adopt it to the point that they were able to get the return on investment immediately. Who knows? I guess we'll know in a few years when all the studies are done and the public data is made available.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's probably so much that goes involved with that kind of stuff, as far as are people maybe not ready for it, or is there just a dislike from a company standpoint, things of that nature. So it's going to be interesting to see how things play out over the next few years.
Do you have anything else to talk about virtual reality?
I mean, we could probably keep going. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that's very interesting and very cool to talk about. But from my aspect and from my experience, all I can say is I definitely recommend people to go out, give it a shot and check it out, because it's actually a really cool experience. It'll pardon the cliche, blow your mind, right? It's gonna be pretty cool.
I hope that I hope that it doesn't do
not literally, not literally.
Yeah. I hope that not. But no, I mean, if people let us know and they like our conversation or want us to delve a bit deeper in any particular topic, let us know.
Definitely share some of your stories, share some of your experiences with virtual reality as well. I'm very curious.
And if we were wrong in anything that we said, obviously also let us know, and we will delve deeper into it. It's a learning experience.
Always is, always will be. Well, everybody, you have yourself a good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whenever you're listening to our wonderful podcast.
For sure. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in.
Take care, everybody.